Welcome, it's Tony from Blacklist Union. How are you?
Doing good. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. In the shadow of the mighty Ramones. I understand you come from New York. Talk about growing up and getting into music and what some of those first shows, what your first heroes were.
I was exposed to music really young. I had a couple of older uncles. One, not too much older. Like one was 11 years older than me, and then one was like 15 or 16 years older than me. So they got me into, Bowie, T-Rex, the Ramones. The first concert I ever went to, I was 5 years old. It was 1981, AC/DC for Those About to Rock tour. Oh, man. So that changed my life.
So the cannons, the lights, the pyro.
I remember jumping out of my skin, and I just took my 8-year-old son to see the Stones recently, because that, it just had an eternal effect on me. It's like, I have goosebumps.
Your life changed
after
that.
So.
Yeah, I mean, Angus was still in his prime. And
yeah, from what I remember, I remember bits and pieces, but like he went into the audience on one of the crew guys' shoulders.
Yeah.
I wasn't a band member.
Well, originally that was Bon Scott's shoulders, but they got so big at that point it was the roadie.
Right. Well, it was Brian Johnson by then, of course.
Yeah. I worked with him in the early days, and Bon would put him on his shoulders and just walk through the crowd, man.
I've seen pictures.
In Denver, he went in the Rainbow Music Hall. He went down the aisle. Outside, he's out in like the parking lot.
Wow, nice.
Wireless guitar, and then came down like 5 minutes later, still wailing, coming down the other side. Man, put him up on stage. This was the days when there was no barrier, so literally Angus was closer than this.
Right.
I mean, talking
That's
about
awesome.
The rock and roll attitude.
That's my son's favorite guitar player. He just started playing guitar, and he likes Angus. I'm like, you can't go wrong with that. I'm like, listen to some Howlin' Wolf and some old school cats
yeah,
too.
listen to Angus's heroes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
No, it's amazing stuff. So, obviously, growing up in New York, you're in the hotbed. So much music, and by the time you were able to get into clubs,
Well, I was going to clubs way before I should have been. I mean,
Sure.
I was 8 years old and seeing the Ramones and my uncle and stuff. Like, I was the little punk rock kid everybody thought was so cute and shit. That kid. And I don't see too many of those kids anymore.
It was less corporate, so they could kind of sneak you into CBGBs or something.
Right, and people seem to... They were definitely less PC at that point, of planet Earth. I mean,
yeah, but no metal detectors at the door.
Yeah, there was nothing like that. Growing up, we fought with our fists. There was never, and especially the early punk rock shows I went to in New York and even out here, there was never guns, there was never knives, there was never violence. If you stage dove and fell on the floor, someone would pick you up. There was unity, there was camaraderie, which I think is a huge thing missing from music today, and not until we have that again where, we're looking out for each other, we're playing on the same bills with each other and working together, will we have another scene, and I think, especially LA.
Got to be a community.
Exactly, in LA, New York,
can't be us versus them.
Yeah, they have this attitude in LA where, everyone hates on each other, they talk shit about each other, and
they go see the one act and they leave right after that.
It's shot the whole scene in the foot where there's no scene now, because of that attitude, I believe, so.
Yeah, well, you got a taste of it, firsthand. I mean, what were some of the other great memories or historic shows or bands you saw in New York?
The Ramones, GBH was a huge influence on me, a punk rock band, AC/DC. Who else did I see? I used to see bands like a lot of new wave bands too, The Cure and Psych Furs, shit, I was like 9 years old. I saw Tears for Fears 3 nights in a row with my uncle at Radio City Music Hall, Songs from the Big Chair record.
Right. The big one, yeah.
So all this stuff has, music has been my entire life.
Yeah.
Although I had a couple of family members that turned me on to music, I had a really abusive childhood and stuff. And music was my saving grace. It still is today.
So now, what age did you run away and say, man, the palm trees, the sunshine, the beach in L.A.
Well,
is
what
it?
was Guns N' Roses came out, and I was like, wow, I was so enamored by them as a young, impressionable kid that, and my household had become unbearable, that, basically I just got on a bus at 13 years old, came out to LA, and
one-way ticket to Hollywood.
Because of Guns N' Roses, it's like, I've met those guys and I've told them in various times, like, it's all your fault, and and I've had funny reactions from all of them. But you know, when I was a kid on Hollywood Boulevard, hanging out at Tommy's Burgers on Wilcox in Hollywood, you know, on drugs, runaway. You know, a lot of those people are dead, man. You know, in jail. Some of them are sober, still alive. The one thing that kept me alive was that at a very, very young age, I started telemarketing. So that enabled me, you know, by the time I was 15, I was paying my own bills, I had my own place, I had fake ID, you know, the whole nine.
Yeah.
And I was telling you the story how, you know, when I had already been going to the Rainbow for a long time. It's amazing too because I have such a baby face. I don't know how the hell I passed at that.
I know.
I don't think anyone cared, but I remember telling Mario, you know, it's my 21st birthday, and he was like, "You motherfucker, you know, how long you been coming here, you know?" So I was like, "Whoops." Yeah. But he used to literally feed
You're finally illegal. He's been seeing you for 5 years.
Right, right. You know. So.
Yeah.
Apparently, I'm not the first because I've told that story. And
right.
people are like, "Oh, that happened to me," you know.
Yeah. Again, a little less PC. They were
more girls than guys, though. You know, you hear girls say that shit more often. I've been going there since I was 15 or 16. You know.
Yeah, amazing stuff. So, what was your first impressions? You know, when you got out here, were you just wild-eyed, like, oh my god?
Well, you know, the punk rock scene was really happening in LA, and at the same time, Sunset Strip was happening. I got to catch the tail end of that with the flyers and all that shit. I think I made it to Gazzari's one time. I never met Bill Gazzari, but they also had Raji's. You know, I saw Nirvana there. There used to be this great punk rock band called Snare that's no longer around, and
yeah, back in the day, Cate de Grande and man, all those little clubs around Hollywood. Oh, the Club Lingerie, that was a big one on Sunset. I remember running into Bill Graham there one day, man. It was incredible. Yeah.
Exposure from before. What else was there? English Acid.
They used to throw those shows downtown at Park Plaza, some of those hotels, those old hotels. Yeah, I know Dale Gloria used to do some stuff.
We're arch enemies.
Is that right? Well, you know, those early days at a Cat House and a bunch of those venues, you know.
Yeah.
So Guns N' Roses did it for you. You just saw it. This thing was erupt, and they had come, you know, from Indiana and stuff.
Right. Yeah.
Not that, of course, Adler and Slash were from Fairfax High, but you know.
But the thing they had was angst. You know, they had definitely had a lot of punk rock vibe to them. They were very street. You know, me personally, I've never been into the commercial, strippy bands. You know, like that kind of made a mockery of rock. You know, in a way. Guns N' Roses were authentic, and I think people know, not even by knowingly, they know what's authentic and what's not. It just comes across that way. People feel it versus something that's fake and contrived. People feel that too, unknowingly. You know what I'm saying? But GNR just seemed to hit people right in the heart. Where, you know, it changed my whole life. It shaped my whole life.
It was so hectic. I remember working with those guys in the early days and seeing them for the first time. You could just tell anything. Something could implode at any minute.
Right. See,
it was so dangerous. It was so hectic that it's like Axl could throw a fit, or Slash could throw his guitar down, walk out, or Duff could pass out, or, you know, it just had that feeling. Adler could flip out and get in a fight with somebody.
See, that's the fucking thing that's missing from rock and roll, is that everyone's too concerned about what everyone thinks. Everyone's too PC, you know. There's nothing PC about Guns N' Roses or Axl Rose. I mean, he's calling people out, you know, getting the ring and all that. So he's calling people out, you know. And that's one of the things I take pride in with Blacklist Union, is like, we have a nasty fucking reputation, and, you know, we are not PC. And, you know, I'll always let you know where I stand. That doesn't mean I have to be an asshole or arrogant or anything. And, you know, if you know me and what kind of person I am. But this being Hollywood, Tinseltown, so many people say so much bullshit. You know, it's constant drama. Like I said, this scene has shot itself in the foot. Like, there's no scene anymore.
Yeah, it's like the first wave went out and got deals, but where's the next wave? I mean, people acted like, well, I got my deal, fuck everybody else, you know, and there was, the community was lost.
Right.
That's like I say, really, you know, the Warped Tour is still one of the things that keeps that young punk rock attitude. Like, okay, the bands got big and they got their own tours, but we're going to find the new bands every year.
To go,
you know what I mean?
Yeah,
that's off to Kevin Lyman, you know.
Yeah.
But So now tell me about the name Blacklist Union. How'd you come up with that, and what's that mean to you?
Well, you know, our buddy, you know, Dale Gloria, you know, she has many things to say about me, and, you know, I've never done anything to this woman. I mean, I've called her a couple derogatory names from the stage after being pushed, you know, kind of to the limit. But, you know, there's an instance where she had said to me, you're not going to play any band, or you're not going to play in any club in LA except the Coconut Teaser, right? Oddly enough, every club in town except the Coconut Teaser gets a letter, you know, signed from me saying, you know, fuck you, we don't need you, blah, 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 we have Axl on our side. And then it was all typed, my signature, Tony West, like typed, you know, and it was definitely her, you know what I mean, and she's made this attempt to blacklist me from everywhere. So I was just like, you know what, man, you know, we're a bunch of blacklisted motherfuckers that, you know, we're not PC, we're going to call it like it is, and Blacklist Union is just an outlaw name to me. I love that name, you know, so.
Little did I know, man, what name I was going to bring up.
Yeah. Yeah, that's another can of worms.
Exactly,
you know?
man. I lit the fuse.
I'm the kind of guy, too, where it's like, I don't want to have any animosity towards anyone. You know, I want to clean up whatever.
And you can't really figure out where it came from? Or
no, dude. She's been served with cease and desist letters, all kinds of stuff, you know. Wow. So, yeah, I just don't get it. Amazing
stuff. Well, I know it's been an evolution as far as the recordings, and I'm sure your bandmates and all that. What is the common thread? What keeps you going, and you know, what are you all about that fires you up to make this new album?
Well, you know, lyrically, you know, Steven Tyler, Bon Scott, even Nikki Sixx, you know, even Joey Ramone, the simplicity of his lyrics, or, you know, Axl, you know, they kind of, to me, shot straight, you know what I mean, within their lyrics. And I'm not a big talker. I mean, go figure, I'm talking my ass off right now, but I'd rather have people read the lyrics to find out, you know, what the story is, basically. Yeah. And music for me is therapeutic. It's like, you know, there's no other way to describe. It's therapeutic, and I need it to thrive and survive. You know, I've tried not to do it, you know, and it's just I become unglued. You know what I mean? But the driving force is, you know, especially without, you know, our fourth record having, you know, no commercial success really. I mean, we've had minimal things, and there's millions of people that love Blacklist Union around the world. You know, I'd say thousands, but there's millions of people that don't know about Blacklist Union that love rock and roll. You know, yeah. So I want to keep going for them, and I was the kid that needed music to survive. You know, my childhood, my trauma.
It was the escape. It was the way out.
Right. Rather than, I mean, believe me, I had my share with drugs, but that was, you know, the real good way, the healthy, you know, way.
At what point did you see that drugs were just going to take you off your course?
I mean, pretty young age.
Yeah.
I was 18, and we went on Geraldo. Robin Crosby was on that show with me from Rat.
Yeah.
And he's dead now, you know, because of drugs. But I said to him, we did Geraldo, it was about crystal meth, and they offered us rehab on the show. And I said to Robin, I said, dude, you know, you're a fucking rock star. I mean, why don't you go to rehab? They're offering it to us all. And he said, that's okay, Tony, I already had my day, you go. And I was like, okay, I'll go. And that was my introduction to recovery and the steps and healing myself, you know, all that. And in a way, you know, not in a way, I mean, Robin Crosby kind of saved my life, you know. So God bless him. You know?
Yeah. Wish everybody got that message. Like I say, it's great to party, have a good time, but
you got to draw the line.
Yeah, if it becomes your focus and music or doing something in life isn't, then, you know, it's a one-way ticket to hell.
I even think that's, you know, with weed too. It's like, you know, Indians weren't chain smoking weed every day. Like, they used it in ceremonial ways.
All about a balance.
Just like tobacco, right?
Yeah, just because you have it in front of you doesn't mean you need to smoke the whole bag.
Right, but it's easier said than done for some. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, that's amazing. So now you're telling us that the great Vicky Hamilton is now working with you, and we all know Vicky, of course, from her days at Licorice Pizza right across the street from the whiskey.
Oh, she's told me about that.
Yeah, that's where Nikki Sixx would come over and bring her Too Fast for Love, and of course that led to, you know, Slash and Axl and the great stories that we've read about, you know, her getting them the deal, and, you know, again, the corporate side of things kind of edging her out because she didn't have the track record that, you know, somebody else might have. But to me, it's about the trailblazers. It's about the people that were there when the money wasn't there, when the opportunities weren't glamorous.
Right. She's definitely one of those. I mean, she's an angel in my life. You know, we've known each other for a long time, and she did not start out as a fan of Blacklist Union, you know, and you know, our relationship kind of just had to develop. It developed organically over time, which is so much more better, you know. It just seems better that way. And
sure.
When she heard the new CD, you know, she just was like, you know, her and Doug Goldstein, who managed Guns N' Roses too, said this is the best record he heard since Appetite for Destruction, you know. And I mean, I was honored. That's the ultimate honor, you know. I mean,
you can't pay him to say that.
It's kind of like Wayne and Garth. We're not worthy, you know.
Right.
You know? So, but you know, I really love Vicky. She's an angel in my life, you know.
Yeah.
And I couldn't say enough good things about her.
Of course. No, she was right there and got behind those bands again before they could pay her or before there was fruit on the tree. You know,
and
Poison, Motley Crue,
and should have got.
Guns N' Roses.
You know,
yeah. No, I'm always rooting for the underdog, and the fact that they would push her out the door, you know, once the wheels started turning. It's again, revenge is you know, best handled through future success, and
that's right.
I know this album means a lot to you. Talk about some of the songs on the record. Talk about, you know, what you're most proud of on this album.
You know, the first three Blacklist Union records were very dark, and it's almost like our producer was trying to make us something we weren't, like the next Saliva or the next Fuel and stuff. And one of the things that was really missing from the first three records for me was blues and punk rock, because those are my two most major influences, you know. And you know, this record, I was just like, look, you know, we got to get back to the blues and the punk rock. And you know, Todd Youth, who, you know, I pretty much grew up with, and you know, he you know, I've known him from a very young age, but he didn't know me, but I knew his bands and I knew his history. And I mean, the guy started out, we were the same age, he started out at 12 years old, you know, 11 years old playing in punk rock bands, you know. It's like, but whatchamacallit, so me and him have been friends, and we just decided, well, let's write a kick-ass fucking rock record, dude, you know. And that's what we did. And you know, the first single's called Alive and Well, Smack in the Middle of Hell, which is like, you know, being able to walk through all the bullshit, you know, and still, you know, stand tall and still keep going, and you're not dead yet, you know what I mean? It's like, keep going. And there's another song on there, Shake It Off, which is about you know, my relationship with my parents and my family. You know, they're very toxic, and you know, I just had to let that go, and the idea of ever having some sort of normalcy with them. And you know, there's another song, Mirror, Mirror on the Wall, which is about, you know, sometimes it's not everyone else. You know, you got to look yourself in the mirror and say, okay, what's wrong? What's the common denominator here? Okay, that's me, you know. So you got to look at yourself sometimes and be like, okay, where am I wrong? Where am I fucking up? You know, that's about being humble. And these are all things I learned in AA. Like, I was never taught these things, you know, from my parents. I left school really young, you know what I mean? So, you know, I call it, have street language, you know. But we have another song, Evil Eye, which is going to be the second single. That's about my mother. And we also covered Rock and Roll Outlaw by Rose Tattoo, which
Angry Anderson.
Yeah, Angry Anderson's the shit. And not too many people in America know of them. Of course, they know Nice Boys Don't Play Rock and Roll. Guns N' Roses covered it, but that's also a Rose Tattoo song. Yeah. Then,
well, I love that about Guns, because they were into Nazareth. They turned people on to Hair of the Dog. I mean, Spaghetti Incident. They were into The Damned.
Fear.
Fear. I mean, it's always great when underrated bands get heard through somebody that gets popular.
Yeah, and then they get some royalty checks too from that, you know, and they can pay some bills, you know. They covered a Johnny Thunder song.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at rock and roll now, and you look at that first, you know, couple Rose Tattoo albums, they were just covered in tats and bald heads and piercings.
And shit.
Yeah, man, you could just see the brawling Australian pubs that they were just knocking that, you know, that Bon Scott, you know, shit out. And
I remember the first time I heard them, you know, it was like 20 years ago, and I was just so blown away because AC/DC was such a huge part of my, you know, upcoming, you know, from 5 years old. But when I heard Rose Tattoo, I was just like, oh my God, this is amazing, you know?
Yeah. Well, I remember when AC/DC came out, it was obviously that 77, 78, punk rock was taking off.
Right.
And people were taken aback. They're like, is this band, are they punk? Are they metal?
Right. See,
what the hell are they?
Right. Those are the best bands when you can't classify them.
Yeah, they weren't jumping on a trend. They could care less what you call them.
Right, right. It's cool.
You know, it's like Lemmy. We play rock and roll.
Right.
I mean, you can call it whatever you want, but that's what we do.
Right.
You know. Now, obviously, characters like Lemmy are mainstays, you know, here in Hollywood. He's a fixture. I got a lot
of funny stories
at the Rainbow, man. Tell us your favorite Lemmy story.
I got a couple of them. So one time I walked up to Lemmy at the Rainbow and said, hey man, my friends are here from New York, you know, they're really big Motorhead fans, will you come say hello? And like without missing a beat, he's like, this isn't a bloody circus, mate. This isn't a bloody circus. I was like, okay, sorry dude.
It ain't a meet and greet.
He's so witty, you know, like he comes up with the shit right away. There was another really good one. I told him when I was 15, I saw Motorhead and the Cro-Mags at the Palladium, and I said I dove off stage, got punched in the face, and lost my shoe. And this is true, right? And Lemmy says, without missing a beat again, he goes, serves you right, mate, jumping on the people's heads. What are you doing that for anyway? You know, it's just like, he left me stunned, like I didn't know what to say.
Yeah, he didn't stew on it for a minute. It just came straight out, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. It's witty. It's like, you know, he doesn't miss a mark, you know.
Yeah, he is definitely an institution. And one thing about me is showing these guys the respect. You know, showing the founding fathers, like the Ramones, they're almost all gone, you know, and, you know, these founding fathers of rock and roll, the Chuck Berry, Little Richard, Jerry Lee Lewis, you know, we lost Elvis like 35 years ago, but these guys are still alive. And a lot of them feel like this younger generation thinks of them as some old dudes, you know, some old, weird black guys.
Well, that's the problem.
You know, these guys invented rock and roll.
Yeah.
I mean, I just spoke to Roger Earl from Foghat, and this dude's been doing it since like 61.
Right.
And I asked him about his early days. He said, again, the British accent, he said, mate, first time I heard Great Balls of Fire, Jerry Lee Lewis, my life was forever changed.
Yeah.
He said, everybody in England, Zeppelin, Stones, Who, they were all infatuated with American blues, early rock and roll.
Yeah.
You talk to the Beatles.
Robert Johnson, Willie Dixon.
Yeah, they were like little groupies,
Waters,
man.
Yeah.
They got around any of those guys.
Freddie King, Albert King.
Oh, yeah, just us, B.B. King. I mean, it's so important, you know. It's one thing to go to their statue or their grave and lay a flower, but these guys are still alive.
Right.
You know, you talk to Lemmy or Dave Grohl, they say the greatest rock and roll singer ever was Little Richard. This dude took it from when they were doing like doo-wop to like, he was like screaming and hollering. And yeah, I mean, they were arguing who was a bigger Little Richard fan. You know, Lemmy, you see how gruff and rough he is, hard to imagine. But then you realize, like, no, that's, like Lemmy will tell you, I remember before there was even rock and roll.
Right.
You know, I remember when these guys came out and their parents thought they were the Antichrist. You know, don't listen to that devil music. You know,
right.
You know, they only show Elvis from the waist up. You know, they thought he was going to impregnate the female population if they showed him
on camera.
Yeah, just show his swagger
through the television. You know?
Yeah, amazing stuff. So it's nice to know that you have those roots, you have that appreciation.
Yeah,
you know, a lot of these kids, they see the Ramones shirts, but they're like, okay, you know, I hear I want to be sedated. They don't know.
Yeah,
they don't know that when a lot of these groups came out, they weren't immediately embraced. I remember being on Warner Brothers, one of our first big arena tours. They opened for Black Sabbath. You could imagine these old these old stoned out Sabbath fans.
Like,
they were like, get the fuck off the stage, man.
Dude, I saw House of Pain open for the Ramones out here when I was a kid. I must have been 16.
Yeah.
And they got booed off the stage. Like, I mean, House of Pain is a cool rap band, but not with the Ramones.
Yeah.
I guess that's when Dee Dee was going through his rap phase or whatever.
Right.
So he wasn't in the band, but he was still, you know, still hands in hands with the operations.
Good music is good music. You know what I mean?
But everyone booed
the Ramones aren't going to come out any faster just because you know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, it's also famous when Van Halen opened for Ozzy and Black Sabbath on their Never Say Die album. They not only smoked them off the stage, which was Van Halen 1, they smoked them off the stage every night on the tour. Tony Iommi and Geezer, they fired Ozzy after the tour. They're like, man, we need to retool this thing.
Oh, wow.
We're looking like old slugs compared to David Lee and Eddie are just ripping it up, having the party of their lifetime out there. And, you know, we're coming out barely able to hold the mic stand, you know.
Some of my favorite Ramones songs are Dee Dee sang, like Endless Vacation or Warthog. I Lost My Mind's another one. But we have this song on our the Back to Momo CD, which is called Wine Dined in '69, and it's a total take off Dee Dee's vocals. You know, that kind of.
Yeah.
I love that, and every time I sing that song, I think of Dee Dee. I got to know him a little bit his last couple of years of his life, because some friends of mine played with him.
Yeah.
And he was such a humble, nice guy. Like, there was no rock star to him, no arrogance to him. He was so kind and such a sweet soul. And, dude, man, a week before he died, man, we were at the Cat Club, which was next to the Whiskey, you know, for a while. Sunset.
Slim Jim's place.
So, yeah. And then he came up. I'm standing by the ice machine in the Cat Club there. I remember singing the songs. I'm like, those aren't the words. And then he would get, like, lost in his own songs. And I thought that was just so punk rock because, like, he wrote the songs, you know? But I was standing by the ice machine, and Dee Dee comes walking up to me, and he goes, I got to quit playing music, Tony. And I said, what the fuck are you talking about, dude? You're Dee Dee Ramone. You just got inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And verbatim, this is all verbatim, he said to me, none of that shit matters. This shit's killing me, right? I didn't know what to say. Here's one of my childhood heroes. Like, I had no response. I just kind of stood there with my
like
mouth
a statue is not enough.
And he kind of just, you know, walked away. And dude, a week later, he was dead. Yeah.
Amazing. Now, it was a little earlier than you, but of course the Dolls and the Stooges, you know, came through Detroit, New York, and again, when the Dolls came out here, people had no idea, what is this? Is this punk? Is it metal? Is this what is this?
I love, you know, the Dolls. I actually was friends with Arthur Kane and last few years of his life, and Iggy, you know, I love singers like, you know, Iggy and Bowie and, you know, Jagger, who, you know, made people second guess, you know, their drug habits, their sexuality, their rock and roll. Like, that's fucking rock and roll, dude. You know, keep them guessing, you know, like they're all, Iggy was great at that, Bowie, you know, all that shit. Yeah,
a great time. So obviously a little bit of you wants to, you know, bring back a community, wants to pay tribute to the music you grew up on, but also take it to the next step. You know,
sure.
I think one of the big problems is, you know, kids today think music's supposed to be free. Everyone wants to be on a guest list. They don't want to, you know. And I remember growing up, you would do anything to save up some money or bump some change, man, to get that new, you know, that new vinyl or that new cassette or, you know, all that. We got to get the new generation understanding there's a value, there's a great value to this music, man. Yeah. I mean, you're talking about record collections. When you're talking about, you know, these guys coming up, I already could tell your uncle had a hell of a record collection.
Right.
You know, and it was like a treasure trove. You could just flip through, look at the covers. Man, this looks crazy. And throw it on, drop the needle, and be lost. Just be gone.
Yeah.
You know, in that music.
Right,
you know, and
when I was like really young, like my son's age, one of my favorite Sabbath records is "Born Again" with Ian Gillan singing.
Oh yeah,
dude, that's a great album and very overlooked, you know. But that shit is dark as hell, and I would close the lights like as a kid and listen to that shit in the dark, like Disturbing the Priest and Digital Bitch and all these crazy songs, you know. But it took me to a place. Music should take you to a place.
Yeah.
You know? What is it called? Transcending. You know?
Right. Yeah, you should forget about your everyday life and your problems in the
right.
day.
This is why I don't like to touch on politics, religion, any of that shit. It's supposed to be an escape from all that stuff.
Right.
You know? But, you know, I also have influences like Jello Biafra and Henry Rollins and people like that that did touch on that stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, those people taught me what really is going on in the world, actually, you know, especially Jello. You know?
Well, you know, you got to stand for something, and just like Fat Mike and No Effects and whatever. I mean, if you believe in something, you know, don't hold it back.
Right.
Everybody might agree with you, but people are too complacent.
Right, right.
They think, well, why vote? It's not going to make any difference. Why do this? Because, you know, society's screwed anyway. I mean, they don't understand, man. It all starts with you. There is no cop-out, you know.
Right.
If everybody said, well, my vote doesn't count, of course, man, the other side's going to mobilize and take over, you know. So, obviously you're a survivor, a new day, a new album, but you've seen a lot, man. You're wise in your years.
Yeah.
What advice do you give to the young bands, the young players? Because you all start by doing covers. Right. But like GNR, like anybody, you don't make your legacy without writing songs of your own or finding your own little style, your own niche. Like you know, a Rose Tattoo wasn't following anybody. People might try and compare them to AC/DC. They probably didn't even see it, you know.
Same vein.
What advice do you give?
Well, I always like to say, be a plastic surgeon. You know, be a doctor, be a lawyer. But if you absolutely have it in you where you have to be an artist and create, you know, music with your life, you know, you have to do it expecting no results. You really have to love it and be able to, you know, like I can't live without it. You know, I have to do it. You know, it's what keeps me going. Yeah. And I would say do it for the love of it. And my son had career day last year at his school. He was in second grade, now he's in third. But in second grade, they had me come in and talk about my band and career and stuff. And I said, you know, you have to do this because you love to do it. Because all the little kids were like, oh, you're going to get money? And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, no. I'm like, you have to do it because you love to do it, first of all. And the teachers said, oh, like teaching. And I was like, exactly, yeah. You know, because the teachers aren't making no money either. They do it because they love it, you know.
They're making a difference.
So, right. It's about making a difference, dude. You know. And my goal is people come see Blacklist Union, like, if you don't leave singing the songs, like, I haven't done my job. If you don't leave wowed, I haven't done my job. Like, I'm looking to wow the audience, nothing less, you know. And there's not too many bands that can do that. Turbo Negro is a band that can do that to me when they still had the original singer. You know, and I can't think of anything else right now. But there is a good band from LA too called Goldsboro, which is amazing. And that's really all the bands. You know, I wish I can tell you a plethora of bands that were great and to check out. You know.
Yeah.
But I can tell you this, man. If someone tells you you can't do something or you suck or whatever, fuck them. If you have it in your heart to do it, you do it. And you know, I remember being 5 years old too, and no, I might have been a little older, maybe my son's age, because I was in third grade. So yeah, I was probably about 8, and I got this part in the school play, and I went home. I told my mom I got this part in the play singing, and she laughed and said, "I can't sing," you know. So I went to that audition the next day at the music teacher, and I stood outside the door and I listened to the kids singing in there, and I remember thinking to myself, oh yeah, I can't sing. And I walked away, man. And it took me years to get the confidence to be able to, you know, do what I do, man. It took me years to get that because of that. You know, me believing someone else's bullshit, you know. And one of the guys who was a huge influence on me, we have a song dedicated to him, Andrew Wood. He was in a band called Mother Love Bone, and I learned
to Pearl Jam.
When I learned how to sing, like for real, I learned every note, every nuance, everything. Andrew Wood and Mother Love Bone, and then 2 years ago I became the singer of Malfunction, which was Andy's band before Mother Love Bone, and you know, we've since parted, but I had a moment where I was that kid. They told me I couldn't sing. I suck. Give it up. Blah blah blah. I practiced to one of my heroes, songs, religiously, and it was like this. I used to burn sage and get on my knees and pray and say this prayer exactly like I would say, I pray to the spirit of Andrew Wood. Please help me to help you have the world hear your music again. Please use me as a channel. Please help me to sing. That's exactly what I would say. Many years later, I'm singing in his band in front of his mother, next to his brother, in front of the Soundgarden camp, Alice in Chains camp, Nirvana camp. Like, it was a dream come true for me. And that moment, I made it in that moment. Within, internally. It didn't matter if the exterior, I didn't have the huge house or, the nice cars, the motorcycle, whatever it is, it didn't matter. But internally, it did something to me. It shifted something.
It was an accomplishment.
Huh? Yeah.
Yeah.
It was huge. In that moment, I made it. And, I've told Vicky, quite a few times that, if that's as good as it gets, so be it. But, I'm not going to, quit anytime soon. So, and the CD, our new CD is blowing up in England and across Europe. And we got people in Mexico playing it, South America, everywhere. Dude, they told us it's in 70 countries. I didn't even know there was 70 countries.
I know.
So,
it's hard to list them.
Right?
Well, Tony, it's a real pleasure, man. It's always good to see you. I know rock and roll's in your heart, and we need more of you. So
Thanks.
Please, man, don't ever quit and keep rocking, man. You got indie power.
Right on. Thank you, man.
So.